One man walked into a police station carrying 6 bloody ropes, and nobody could touch him. What he did that night in 1952 changed organized crime forever, and the cops helped him cover it up. The Philadelphia Police Department has a file marked, "Do Not Open." It sits in a locked cabinet in the basement. Only 3 people know the combination. Inside that file are 6 death certificates, all dated March 15th, 1952. All signed by the same coroner, all ruled accidental. But here's what that file doesn't tell you. Those 6 men didn't die by accident. They died because they made one terrible mistake. They killed the wrong man's brother. And the man who killed them walked into the police station the next morning, covered in blood, and the cops thanked him. This is the story of Frank the Knife Costello, and why even the police were terrified of what he could do. To understand what happened in March 1952, you need to understand who Anthony Sweet Tony Romano was and why Frank Costello would burn the entire city down to avenge him. Tony was born in South Philly in 1925. His mother died when he was 6. His father drank himself to death 2 years later. By age 8, Tony was sleeping in doorways and stealing bread just to survive. Winter of 1933. Tony was 10 years old. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. He tried to steal an apple from a fruit stand on Market Street. The owner caught him. Big guy, mean eyes. Called the cops. Tony ran. Didn't get far. 2 police officers grabbed him in an alley. One of them pulled his nightstick. This is what happens to little thieves. The nightstick came down. Never connected. A hand caught the cop's wrist mid-swing. Strong grip. Calm voice. He's just hungry. Let him go. The cop turned around, ready to fight. Saw Frank Costello's face. Saw something there that made him choose differently. The cop let go of Tony. Walked away without another word. Frank looked down at the kid. Skinny, scared, shaking. "When's the last time you ate?" Tony's voice was barely a whisper. 3 days. Frank pulled out his wallet. Handed Tony a $5 bill. More money than Tony had ever seen. "Get yourself some food. Real food, not stolen apples." Tony stared at the money. "Why are you helping me?" "Because somebody helped me once when I was your age. Now it's my turn to help you." But Tony didn't leave. He stood there looking up at Frank with eyes that had seen too much too soon. "I don't have anywhere to go. No family?" Tony shook his head. Frank was quiet for a moment. Then he made a decision that would change both their lives. "You do now. Come with me." Frank took Tony to a boarding house on 7th Street, paid for a room, paid for clothes, paid for food. Every week, Frank would visit, bring money, bring books, teach Tony how to read, how to write, how to survive in a city that didn't care about orphans. By 1940, Tony was 15. Frank offered him work. Nothing illegal, just errands, deliveries, messages, legitimate business. Tony worked hard, never complained, never asked questions, never forgot that Frank had saved him when nobody else cared. December 1941, Pearl Harbor. America entered the war. Tony was 16, but he lied about his age. Enlisted in the Marines. Wanted to prove he was worth something. Wanted to make Frank proud. Frank could have stopped him, had connections, had money, but Tony wanted to fight, so Frank let him go. Made him a promise, though. "You come back, and you'll have a place with me. Always." "Why would you do that for me?" Frank put his hand on Tony's shoulder. "Because you're not just some kid I helped anymore. You're my brother, and I protect my brothers." Tony shipped out in March 1942, landed on Guadalcanal 6 months later. The fighting was brutal. Heat, disease, Japanese soldiers who never surrendered. Tony's platoon got pinned down by machine gun fire. 12 men trapped in a crater. No way out. The lieutenant was dead. Nobody is giving orders. Tony was just a corporal. But somebody had to do something. He grabbed grenades, crawled through Thrathga jungle, flanked the Japanese position, threw 4 grenades, silenced the machine guns, saved 11 lives. They gave him the Silver Star. gave him a handshake from a general, gave him scars that would never fully heal. Tony came home in 1945, stepped off the ship, expecting to feel different, expecting to feel like a hero. Instead, he felt empty, lost, like part of him died on that island and never came back. Frank found him 3 days later, sitting alone in a bar on South Street, staring at a whiskey he hadn't touched. Frank sat down next to him, didn't say anything, just sat there. After 10 minutes, Tony finally spoke. "I killed 17 men over there. Watched my friends die. Watched kids younger than me bleed out, calling for their mothers. And for what? So I could come home to the same streets. The same nothing." Frank signaled the bartender. "2 more. You didn't fight for nothing, Tony. You fought because you're brave. Because you're loyal. Because that's who you are." Tony's hands were shaking. "I don't know who I am anymore." "Then, let me remind you. You're the kid who survived when everyone else gave up. The kid who became a man. The Marine who saved 11 lives. And you're my brother. That still means something." Frank pulled out an envelope. Inside was $5,000. "This is yours. Start over. Do whatever you want. You don't owe me anything." Tony stared at the money, then pushed it back. "I don't want money, Frank. I want purpose. I want family. I want to matter. You already matter. To me. Then let me work for you. Really work for you. Not errands. Not deliveries. Whatever you need, I'm in." Frank studied Tony's face, saw determination, saw loyalty, saw a brother. "All right. You start tomorrow. And Tony, from now on, you watch my back and I'll watch yours. Deal." For 7 years, Tony worked with Frank. Not for him, with him. Tony became Frank's right hand, his protection, his most trusted friend. In those 7 years, Tony saved Frank's life 4 times. The first time was in 1946. Frank was meeting with some Irish gang members, discussing territory. Tony stood by the door watching. Something felt wrong. The way the Irish kept looking at each other, the way their hands stayed near their waists. Tony saw it before it happened. Saw the lead guy's shoulder tense. Saw his hand move toward his jacket. Tony drew faster. Put 3 bullets in the ceiling. Everybody freeze. The Irish guy's hand was halfway to his gun. Tony walked over, pulled the gun from his jacket, looked at Frank. "They came here to kill you, boss." Frank looked at the Irish crew, cold eyes. "You just made a serious mistake." The Irish left, didn't come back. 3 days later, their bodies turned up in the Delaware River. The second time was 1948. Somebody poisoned Frank's food at a restaurant. Tony noticed the waiter's hands shaking. Noticed him leaving too quickly. Knocked the plate away before Frank could take a bite. They found rat poison in the pasta. "Enough to kill 3 men, the waiter confessed. Said a rival family paid him $5,000. They found the waiter in a dumpster 2 weeks later. The third time was 1950. Sniper on a rooftop. Tony saw the glint, saw the scope, pushed Frank behind a car. The bullet hit the car door where Frank's head had been. Tony returned fire. Hit the sniper twice. Saved Frank's life with 2 seconds to spare. The fourth time was 1951. Car bomb. Tony checked Frank's car every morning, found the bomb wired under the driver's seat. If Frank had turned that ignition, he would have been scattered across 3 city blocks. Tony disarmed it himself, hand steady, no fear. That night, Frank sat with Tony in his office. Poured 2 glasses of scotch. 4 times, Tony. 4 times you saved my life. Just doing my job, Frank. No, what you do goes beyond any job. You're not my employee. You're not my soldier. You're my brother. And if anything ever happened to you, I would burn this entire city to the ground." Tony smiled. "Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm too careful." Famous last words. March 12th, 1952, Wednesday night. Tony was walking home from Frank's club on Broad Street, 3 blocks from his apartment. He heard footsteps behind him. Turned around. 6 men. All are wearing masks. all carrying bats and chains. Tony reached for his gun, too slow. They rushed him, 6 against 1. Tony fought, took down 2 before they overwhelmed him. Fists, boots, chains. They beat him for 5 minutes. Then they dragged him to a van, threw him inside, drove to the outskirts of the city, industrial area, empty warehouses. Nobody around for miles. They tied Tony to a chair. The leader pulled off his mask, Vincent the Blade Marino. He worked for the Gambino family out of New York. They wanted Frank dead, wanted his territory. And they knew the only way to hurt Frank was to hurt Tony. Vincent stood in front of Tony, smiled. Your boss, Frank Costello, thinks he runs Philadelphia. Tonight we're sending him a message. Tony's face was already swelling. His ribs were broken. He could barely breathe, but he looked Vincent straight in the eyes. Frank's going to kill all of you for this. Vincent laughed. Frank's going to find your body in 6 pieces scattered across the city, and then he's going to know that nobody's untouchable. They started with Tony's fingers, bolt cutters, one by one. Tony screamed, begged, please, I'm a veteran. I fought for this country. I have medals. Vincent picked up Tony's silver star from his jacket, looked at it, dropped it on the floor. This doesn't mean anything here. You're just a message. They worked on Tony for 3 hours, broke every bone in his hands, cut off his ears, stabbed him 17 times, made sure he stayed conscious for all of it. At 2 a.m., they finally stopped. Tony was barely alive, blood everywhere, breathing shallow. Vincent leaned close. Any last words for your boss? Tony's voice was a whisper. Tell Frank I'm sorry I couldn't protect him one more time. Vincent laughed. That's touching. Really. Then he put a bullet in Tony's head. They cut Tony's body into 6 pieces, left them in different locations across Philadelphia. The head in South Philly, the torso in North Philly. Arms and legs were scattered everywhere. Each piece had a note. This is what happens when you challenge New York. March 13th, 6 a.m. Frank's phone rang. It was the police. Mr. Costello, you need to come down to the station. It's about Tony Romano. Frank's blood went cold. What about him? You need to come down, sir. Now. Frank drove to the station, walked inside. The desk sergeant couldn't look him in the eyes. Conference room. Down the hall. Frank opened the door. Detective Morrison was waiting. 6 crime scene photos were spread on the table. Frank looked at each one. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared. After 5 minutes, Morrison finally spoke. We found notes with each piece. They're from the Gambino family. This was a message for you. Frank's voice was quiet, controlled. Where are they? The men who did this? We don't know yet. We're working on it. Frank looked at Morrison, cold eyes. Don't bother. I'll find them myself. Mr. Costello, we can't let you take the law into your own hands. Frank stood up, picked up one of the photos, looked at it. This is Tony Romano, war hero, Silver Star. Saved 11 men on Guadalcanal. Saved my life 4 times. He was more than my friend. He was my brother. And 6 men tortured him for 3 hours before killing him. Morrison was quiet. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to find those 6 men. I'm going to make them suffer exactly like Tony suffered. And when I'm done, I'm going to walk back in here. And you're going to thank me for cleaning up your city. Frank walked out. By noon, Frank had names. Vincent Marino, Tommy Santos, Paulie Ricci, Marco DeLuca, Angelo Bianchi, Sal Fontana, all Gambino soldiers, all hiding in a warehouse in Jersey. Frank gathered 15 men, armed them, gave them one order. We bring them back alive. All 6. I want them breathing when we start. 10 p.m. Frank's crew hit the warehouse. Fast, hard, no mercy. Vincent's men tried to fight. Didn't matter. 90 seconds later, 6 men were on the floor, tied up, gagged, loaded into a truck. Frank drove them to an abandoned factory outside the city. Nobody around. Nobody to hear screams. They tied the 6 men to chairs. Side by side, all conscious, all terrified. Frank walked in front of them, pulled out Tony's silver star. Still bloody. You know what this is? This belonged to Antonio Romano. He earned it saving 11 Marines on Guadalcanal. He came home expecting respect. Instead, you tortured him for 3 hours, cut off his fingers, cut off his ears, made him beg. Frank's voice was ice. Tonight you're going to experience exactly what Tony experienced. Every cut, every break, every second of pain. But there's one difference. Tony died after 3 hours. You're going to suffer for 6. Frank started with Vincent. Bolt cutters, fingers first, one by one. Vincent screamed through his gag. The other 5 watched, knowing they were next. For 6 hours, Frank worked through each man, methodical, precise, making sure they felt everything. His men stood guard. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away. This was justice, Harlem style. Philadelphia style. The only style that mattered. At 4 a.m., it was over. 6 bodies, 6 messages delivered. Frank loaded them into a truck, drove to the Delaware River, dumped them in, watched them sink. Then he drove to the police station. Walked inside, covered in blood, carrying 6 bloody ropes. Detective Morrison was at his desk, looked up, saw Frank, stood up slowly. It's done. The 6 men who killed Tony Romano are in the Delaware River. You'll find them in a few days when they float up. Morrison should have arrested him. Should have called for backup. Instead, he walked over to Frank, extended his hand. Thank you for cleaning up our city, Mr. Costello. Frank shook his hand. Tony Romano was a hero. He deserved better than what they did to him. I agree. Morrison pulled out a file, handed it to Frank. This is the official report. 6 Gambino soldiers killed each other in a dispute over territory. Case closed. No investigation needed. Frank took the file, nodded. Morrison sat back down. One more thing, Mr. Costello. What? After tonight, every gang on the East Coast is going to know what happens when they touch your family. Nobody's going to make that mistake again. Good. That's exactly what Tony would have wanted. Frank walked out of the station, got in his car, drove to Tony's grave, stood there for an hour, didn't cry, didn't speak, just stood. Finally, he placed Tony's silver star on the headstone. You protected me 4 times, brother. Tonight I protected your memory. Rest easy now. Nobody will ever forget what you meant to me. Nobody will ever forget what they took. And nobody will ever make that mistake again. The next day, every newspaper in Philadelphia ran the same headline. 6 Gambino soldiers found dead. Gang violence suspected. Case closed. But everyone in the underworld knew the truth. Frank the Knife Costello had sent a message. Touch my family, and you die screaming. For the next 20 years, not a single gang tried to move into Frank's territory. Not one. Because they all remembered the 6 ropes. They all remembered the Delaware River. They all remembered that some men don't forgive. They get even. If you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe right now.